It was March 2nd, 1998, and cable channel Cartoon Network were introduced their most memorable and iconic eras throughout their 30-year history. Powerhouse. Named after Raymond Scott's music score used in several Warner Bros. Cartoons, it was noticeable for having newly animated bumpers that were a notable contrast to the recycled animation ID spots in the checkerboard era and the Starburst era that immediately followed. As someone who grew up with this era, I could tell you a lot of CN history happened during this time, which is why I took the liberty of making a comprehensive timeline of the Powerhouse era from its inception to its end in 2004. This piece of Cartoon Network history means a lot to me because it reminds me of a time where the channel wasn't just some kids network, it was made for animation lovers of all ages. After all,
everybody loves cartoons!
I'm so excited, you're probably more excited, so let's get started. In March of 1998, Cartoon Network introduced Powerhouse, a new update to the channel, which was accompanied by new bumpers and graphics. These were done by Atlanta-based animation studio Primal Screen, which would do a lot of CN promotional material. Funny story, once I got to meet one of the former animators to ask for a job at an animation studio he owned in my hometown. I didn't get the job, but he did give me this layout sheet of Porky Pig from the Fancy Anvil Awards show. Back to what I was saying, these bumpers would depict a typical scene from the show you were watching with a sample of Powerhouse mixed with said show's theme. Most noticeably, the backgrounds were given color schemes to fit with the time of day the cartoons were airing. For example, weekday mornings the backgrounds would be yellow, in the afternoon they'll be green, evenings blue, and for the nights black. And for the action cartoons, the backgrounds would be purple. Additionally, more generic bumpers were created for cartoons airing on the network that wasn't owned by Time Warner, such as the 80s revival of Alvin and the Chipmunks, which started airing reruns this year. There are also new announcers for this era. One of the earliest was the late great Phil Hartman.
You're watching Scooby-Doo on Cartoon Network.
After his tragic death, he would be replaced by his Simpsons co-star, Harry Shearer.
Welcome back to the Flintstones. You think Fred's ever going to take that tie off?
While other announcers include Keith Sweat and Scott Sanders.
You're watching Batman on Cartoon Network.
Coming up next, it's the Animaniacs, followed by Batman on Cartoon Network.
Sometimes various CN characters would take over.
Shuggy, don't freak out, man. I'm right here. Why not freaking out? No, but that zombie right next to you might freak at any moment.
Debuting this year would be the Powerpuff Girls. Originally introduced as a short from World Premiere Toons, the show was about 3 crime-fighting kindergartners with superpowers as they battled the villain of the week. For a while, this would be Cartoon Network's biggest hit and became a hit in merchandising, lasting for 6 seasons, specials, and a theatrical film. Acquired shows during this year would be Animaniacs, Batman the Animated Series, and the obscure Waynehead, which all recently ended their run on Kids WB. Beetlejuice, the animated series, based on a Tim Burton film, and on the Toonami side, Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon, giving many kids their first exposure to anime. Also debuting this year will be Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theater, hosted by the late Don LaFontaine. This Saturday night block will feature many animated non-Disney films from Hanna-Barbera, Warner Brothers, Universal, Don Bluth, and many others. The first movie to ever air was The Land Before Time. Cartoon Theater would also be the home of premieres of then-new direct-to-video releases. The original format of the block lasted until 2004. Notable marathons debuting this year was 50 Greatest Cartoons of All Time. I have very fond memories of this special. It was the first time I saw legendary animators like Chuck Jones and Joe Barbera, who would become my animation heroes. And a Scooby-Doo marathon, Those Meddling Kids, 25 Hours of Due, airing on the day the clocks moved back for daylight savings time. The wraparounds will spoof MTV's The Real World with recycled animation for the cartoons with new voice work. The wraparound segments will later be added as a bonus feature on the Scooby-Doo Greatest Mysteries VHS. June Bugs, a marathon of classic Bugs Bunny cartoons, minus the racially insensitive ones, returned this year. This particular year was notable for the network premiere of the 1995 short Carrot Blanca. 1999 would kick off with the debut of Ed, Edd n Eddy, created by Danny Antonucci of Lupo the Butcher fame. The series featured 3 unpopular preteen boys with the same name who spend their summers scamming the neighborhood kids out of their money with the pursuit of jawbreakers. Notable for being the first CNN original not being introduced by a What a Cartoon Show short, or produced by Hanna-Barbera, or made in the US. The show was very popular and would run on Cartoon Network until 2009, with the series finale TV movie, Ed, Edd n Eddy's Big Picture Show. Currently, it's Cartoon Network's longest running original series. Also debuting this year, Mike, Lou and Og, running until 2001, and another popular series, Courage the Cowardly Dog, a show about a timid pooch who has constant run-ins with the supernatural. This series would end in 2002, but had a successful life of reruns, as was the only other cartoon to have a complete series released on DVD. Cow and Chicken would end this year, but Johnny Bravo will return with new episodes without creator Van Partable's involvement. This retooled version had a new art style, as well as sharper writing and new side characters, and would last until 2002. Dexter's Lab would also air in its initial series finale with the TV movie Eagle Trip. While receiving mixed reviews from critics, it will become a favorite among fans. On the Toonami side, fan favorite Tom will make his debut and become the new host, replacing Space Ghost Motar. Notable blocks and marathons this year include Toonami's Midnight Run, Cartoon of the Day, a block that aired on Random Cartoon, usually airing weekdays after school, Boy Girl, a marathon of Powerpuff Girls and Ed, Edd n Eddy, Movie Marathon, the Jez's Millennium New Year's Eve Marathon, and Millennium. Cartoon Fridays will make its debut this year, the marquee block for new premieres of CN's original programming. In its initial format, CCF consisted of live-action segments featuring actors and actresses performing skits, which were Cartoon Network related, like livestock auctions, lottery shows, weather forecasts, etc. Notable specials include the Big Game Sylvester vs. Tweety, a spoof of the Super Bowl featuring Sylvester and Tweety cartoons, and a Scooby-Doo Project, a marathon of classic Scooby-Doo episodes and movies celebrating the 30th anniversary of the franchise. The promotion was accompanied by a short film spoofing the Blair Witch Project. It's pretty funny and I recommend checking it out. Shorties and Groovies will make their debuts this year. They were a collection of new animated shorts and music videos based on Cartoon Network, Hanna-Barbera, MGM, and Warner Bros. Characters. Shorties include a more edgier look at the classic cartoon characters with a different animation style in each short, while Groovies feature popular music artists performing original songs based on the shows. The most famous of these will be Jabberjaw by Pain. Ren and Stimpy creator John Kay will make 2 New York and Bear shorts, Boo Boo Runs Wild, and A Day in the Life of Ranger Smith. Joe Barbera was not a fan. And Warner Bros. And MGM properties. Once original programming on Cartoon Network started to take off. Cartoon Summer aired this year, a summer block featuring reruns of cartoons, and it returned the following year. Special events this year include the Scooby-Doo Courage the Cowardly Dog Scare-a-thon and The Big Pig. The Big Pig aired on the retooled Cartoon Fridays, where viewers at home could vote online for their favorite animated pilots that could be potential half-hour series. The winner for 2000 was Grim and Evil, and the following year was Codename Kids Next Door. The misses usually varied in quality. Most of them were forgettable, but others were certainly entertaining and had potential, like Lost Cat and the Kitty Bobo Show. Some of the pilots were the last to be released and made by Hanna-Barbera. At the time, they were at the Imperial Bank building at Sherman Oaks, and not too long before the studio's absorption into Warner Brothers. One of the interstitials this year was The Stay Longers, a spoof of the CBS reality show Survivor, which was hugely popular at the time. It had the cartoon characters and Brak go up against the Hanna-Barbera characters. For some reason, Wonder Woman is on the Barbera's team. I guess Super Friends was a Hanna-Barbera cartoon, but she's a DC Comics character first. I don't know, it's weird. Tom Clark will be the new announcer the second half of the year, all the way until early 2002.
Coming up next, it's the Acme Hour, followed by Animaniacs on Cartoon Network.
In 2001, President Betty Cohen, one of the people responsible for the channel since the beginning, was stepped down from her position. When asked, she told a reporter, "I was afraid I would die the queen of cartoons." Her successor was Jim Staples, who would take over from 2001 to 2007. Debuting this year, Time Squad, Grim and Evil, The Chuck Jones Show, Warner Brothers Justice League, The Popeye Show, and Samurai Jack, created by Dexter's Lab's own Jenny Tartakovsky. Speaking of which, Dexter's Lab will be revived for new episodes without the involvement of Jendy, running until its finale in 2003. Also debuting the late-night block Adult Swim, with programming aimed at older audiences featuring original adult animated comedies and uncut anime. Adult Swim would also be the new home of Space Ghost Coast to Coast. Notable blocks this year include Cartoonolio, Primetime, The Best We Got, and a Cartoon Network Christmas Party. Specials include the final big game event, Bugs vs. Daffy, A Night of the Living Dew, a Johnny Bravo Christmas, Bill Plimpton's 12 Tiny Christmas Tales, and the Flintstones on the Rocks. Jumping over to 2002, the channel will celebrate its 10th anniversary with a short bumper. We would also see the new special event, the Fancy Anvil Awards Show, live in stereo, hosted by Johnny Bravo. It was an obvious parody of the Oscars and showcased many clips of various CN, Hanna-Barbera, MGM, and Warner Bros. Cartoons. It also featured live-action guests, such as the late Robin Williams, NSYNC's Chris Kirkpatrick, Charles Barkley, Debbie Allen, and Sandy Duncan. Scooby-Doo also received a Lifetime Achievement Award, and the highlight of the special was a short but sweet memorial dedicated to legendary animators like William Hanna, Maurice Noble, and Chuck Jones. The latter had recently passed a month earlier. Notable shows debuting this year include Whatever Happened to Robot Jones, Codename Kids Next Door, the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe reboot, and Hamtaro on Toonami, and Baby Looney Tunes, acquired from Warner Brothers. The Powerpuff Girls movie was released in theaters this year, and while Warner Bros. Didn't market the film well, it was promoted heavily on Cartoon Network, with several marathons to boot. The film received positive reviews from critics, but some were very critical of the violence. And it also bombed at the box office. In addition to poor marketing, it was also released the same summer as Spider-Man, Men in Black 2, Like Mike, Lilo and Stitch, and a live-action Scooby-Doo. So it had quite the competition. But it would premiere on Cartoon Network the following year. So far, it's Cartoon Network's first and only theatrical feature. Notable blocks and marathons this year include Cartoon Weekend Summerfest, Ed and Eddie's Pool Party, the premiere show, the Cartoon Top 5, and Scaretoon Fright Days. Also, the Iron Giant will premiere this year, and a 24-hour marathon will lead to a spike in popularity, ultimately becoming a cult classic. Actor Doug Priest would take over as announcer until 2003.
Coming up next, it's Baby Looney Tunes, followed by Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries on Cartoon Network.
In 2003, Adult Swim was given a rebrand, and the bumpers of Old People Swimming were replaced by ones featuring pics of a handbook In addition, already canceled and soon to be canceled Fox shows like Futurama and Family Guy were aired in reruns this year. These were proved to be so popular, it would lead to both shows being revived. Debuting this year, Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy and Evil Con Carne spun off to Grim and Evil, Star Wars The Clone Wars, and from Warner Brothers, Teen Titans and Duck Dodgers. Also, acquired reruns include What's New Scooby-Doo, Sitting Ducks, Totally Spies, and 2003 marked the end of Cartoon Fridays. It would be replaced by Summer Fridays and Cartoon Network's Fridays, until the fall, where the block was completely revamped into the New Fridays, featuring live-action hosts and new characters and shows. Memorable blocks include Camp Cartoon, Scooby Universe, Thanksgiving Day Cartoons Marathon, Saturday Video Entertainment System, The Last Bell, November premieres, Cartoon Network's Christmas, and Cartoon Theater Marathon. Specials include the infamous The Groovedians, It's Valentine's Day Johnny Bravo, The Night Before Christmas, Cartoon Network's Greatest Musical Moments, Powerpuff Girls 'Twas the Fight Before Christmas, and Cartoon Network's Funniest Bloopers and Other Embarrassing Moments, the latter hosted by voice actor Tom Kenny. The special, as the title suggests, featured bloopers from various Cartoon Network shows. Interesting enough, many of these will be released as a bonus feature on a Kellogg's promotion, Scooby-Doo and the Toon Tour Mysteries. And now we come to the final year of Powerhouse, 2004, where Kids WB's Muka Lucia aired in reruns, Megas XLR debuted, the Ed's Day Off Marathon aired on MLK Day, which I remember recording it that day. Johnny Bravo will return in February with its final season headed by series creator Van Partible, and Toonami will be replaced by Magoozy, and fans welcome the change with open arms.
What the fuck?
Notable events and specials include Craig Bartlett's Party Wagon pilot and May Movie Month. As the summer was right around the corner, it was time for a fresh look for CN. What was it? Well, join me next time. Before we continue, if you like this or any of my other videos, I would ask you to consider supporting me on Patreon, where every dollar goes to production like software expenses and getting these out on a regular basis. You could get early access, a special credit, shout out to a YouTube, Twitch, or blog, a commission by me. You could even request a Hanna-Barbera or Tom and Jerry special for the Funtastic Legacy of Hanna-Barbera minisodes, which could be anything from this list. If you don't want to, you can also donate to me on Ko-fi. And liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, and clicking the bell icon is much appreciated. Thank you all so much for your support. And now, back to the video. The year was 2004. George H.W. Bush is re-elected as President of the United States. Ken Jennings has a winning streak on Jeopardy! Janet Jackson has an infamous wardrobe malfunction at the Super Bowl halftime show. The Boston Red Sox win the World Series, breaking the Bambino curse. Usher's Confessions, the year's best-selling album. And we saw the debuts of Facebook, Juicy Couture, Halo 2, the Nintendo DS, and the UGG boots. It was a memorable year for movies too. We saw hits like Passion of the Christ, The Incredibles, Napoleon Dynamite, Eternal Sunshine, Mean Girls, Shrek 2, Spider-Man 2, and Scooby-Doo 2. On the small screen, Desperate Housewives, House, The Apprentice, Lost, Veronica Mars, and Entourage. As for kids programming, you have your Saturday morning fare, mostly consisting of reruns such as ABC Kids and Nick on CBS. But you had a few new shows, like The Winx Club on the Fox Box, or The Batman on Kids WB. PBS will launch the afternoon block, PBS Kids Go, and would expand their animated programming, with new shows like Maya and Miguel and the Arthur spinoff, Postcard from Buster. Now cable's a horse of a different color, especially concerning the Big Four. Disney's answer to Toonami, Jetix, would air on Toon Disney, while Disney Channel would introduce new shows and DC original movies. And while Nickelodeon's former biggest show, Rugrats, would end this year, their second biggest hit, SpongeBob SquarePants, get its own theatrical movie. And two of Nick's biggest heavy hitters of the decade, Jimmy Neutron and Timmy Turner, would finally cross over in the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour. In addition, kids will be introduced to Danny Phantom, Ned Bigby, the Backyardigans, Robbie Rotten, a young Emma Roberts, and Drake Parker and Josh Nichols. And then there's Cartoon Network, who on June 14, 2004, introduced their fourth rebranding called The City Era. The City Era was unique simply because of its concept. All your favorite Cartoon Network characters living together in a CGI city and interacting with each other, with locations from various shows recreated in said city. Now this of course isn't anything new. There were bumpers for the Powerhouse era that experimented with this idea with the 2D CN characters in a live action setting, where hijinks would ensue as the characters would work at CN headquarters. The City Era had a chance to flesh out the idea more. Now we can see all these tunes we love and watch them on their off time. There's something so cool about seeing Samurai Jack and Johnny Bravo making small talk as they do laundry, or Fred from Scooby-Doo trying to impress Koopa Jamie. Even something as simple as a bag floating around town and seeing how all the characters react to it. During the early stages of the vid in December last year, I managed to talk to a couple of people who were involved in the creation of the City Era. One was Vice President and Creative Director of the network, Pete Johnson. He had this to say.
Kevin Fitzgerald, my creative partner and design director, and I came up with the concept. My recollection is that we wanted to do something big and very different from any of the past network refaces. We wanted a vibe. We wanted a certain approach to the sound design, to the original music, to even how we talked about time in the menus. We wanted a universe where all the disparate and different characters and worlds would intersect. That's the short answer. We developed a pitch book with our overall creative vision along with our philosophy on all of the above. Kevin handmade 4 pitch books to send to 4 companies that would partner with us. The companies were Imaginary Forces, Primal Screen, Animal Logic, and I believe PSYOP. Animal Logic blew us away with their pitch. It was simply a poster showing thumbnails of all the worlds that would be represented. The initial round of scripts were written by me and Kevin, then we added writers from Cartoon On Air and Animal Logic.
The animation for the City Era was provided by Australian animation studio Animal Logic, known for their effects work for many hit films. One of the animators, Jeff Vallet, told me what it was like working on the project.
I had been working at Animal Logic as an animation lead for a while when the CN rebrand came along. When the opportunity to pitch was presented, I just happened to be free, and because of my background in 2D animation, I was asked to work with art director Grant Freckleton on the pitch. The original vision for the project was to create a shared world for the CN characters where the viewers would get a glimpse of their days. Initially, we were going to composite the 2D animated characters over live-action plates, with 3D elements added where needed. After some discussion, we came to the conclusion that a fully realized 3D world offered more cinematic freedom. What we didn't realize was that the city would become like a character of its own. So we set about creating a proof of concept with Dexter's lab, a simple camera sweep of the lab with a smash cut to the exterior of his house. This was enough to convince the team at CN in Atlanta, and we won the job. From there, we started designing and building a central hub, around which most of the bumpers would play out. Meanwhile, the team in Atlanta started writing the scripts. With a rough 3D layout in place and a handful of scripts, we proceeded to storyboard in 3D layout, while the modeling team continued building and texturing the sets. On many of the bumpers, storyboarding and 3D layout happened almost simultaneously. In some cases, we went straight to the layout from the script. Once layouts were approved, the lighting team merged the cameras into the final environment scenes and got to rendering. At the same time, the 2D animation team led by Art Valoy used the rough layout renders as a guide for animating the characters. Once the 2D animation was completed and the 3D backgrounds were rendered, everything was composited together in After Effects and sent to Atlanta for final sound. Ultimately, the entire project was incredibly fun, collaborative, and successful when you consider it was produced by a remarkably small team. Leading the project at Animal Logic is definitely one of the highlights of my career.
Of course, we can't talk about the City Era without mentioning one of the biggest changes, and that's the voice of the channel. It was a very common practice for TV networks to have their own set of announcers for their programming.
This is NBC.
CN had a few themselves. In the late 90s and early 2000s, you had guys like Tom Clark and Doug Priest. Now the new voice was a young woman named Nicole Vickius, or Nikki for short. Despite being in her early 20s at the time, she sort of reminded me of the cool kid who just happened to be in the cartoons. She was a welcome addition to the CN family.
Now it's Ed, Edd, and Eddy. Then it's Codename Kids Next Door. This is Cartoon Network.
According to Pete Johnson, we looked for a long time for a voice. We did not want a celebrity voice again. I wanted a voice that had a unique texture and attitude. We auditioned all the usual suspects. We had a big cattle call as well. I finally honed in on the voice actors who grew up speaking another language, along with English. They had the most interesting textures to their voice. I do not recall if that's what Nicole's background was, but she ended up on the short list with those type of voices. She was fantastic. We flew her in from LA for a week, I think for her record. She had just done a Diet Coke spot where she is roller skating through lots of bubbles. She told us she got the gig by lying that she could do roller skate at the audition. She had a friend teach her how before the shoot. Old CN faves like Cartoon Theater would get a rebrand, while the new Fridays will return with a new set and skits, while still keeping Tommy and Zynga, who work off each other perfectly. These two really made Fridays so much fun to watch. This was around the time Fridays would also show movies. November marked the network premiere of the DreamWorks film Ants. In addition to CN's most popular series, two of the biggest shows debuting this year, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi. Foster's was created by Powerpuff Girls' Craig McCracken. It's about a boy named Mac who gives up his imaginary friend Blue to an orphanage for abandoned imaginary friends, which is filled with all sorts of weird, creative, and, for lack of a better word, imaginative creatures. The show originally debuted as a TV movie on August 13, 2004. It was the first CN show made entirely by Adobe Flash, running for 6 seasons and 79 episodes. It was one of the most popular CN shows of the mid to late 2000s. Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi was created by future WB head Sam Register, and was another in a long line of cartoons based on fictionalized versions of celebrities. This was based on Japanese pop group Puffy Amiyumi. Yeah, the 2000s were all about being obsessed with Japanese culture. This show had a duo traveling around the world in a tour bus and getting into mischief along the way. I'll admit I didn't watch a lot of the show at the time, but from what I saw, I thought it was fine. Acquired shows during this period, WB's Justice League Unlimited, as well as reruns of Ozzy and Drix and Static Shock, as well as the Canadian Flash series, Atomic Betty. Unfortunately, as new programming made its way to Cartoon Network, classic cartoons were phased out from the channel indefinitely and removed to Boomerang. Tom and Jerry and the occasional Scooby-Doo cartoon will be the only classics running on CN, though the biggest loss of this year was when CN stopped rerunning Looney Tunes. You see, in 2003, Looney Tunes Back in Action bombed pretty hard at the box office, which is pretty much WB's fault, but that's another story. Anyway, this led to them removing the shorts from the schedule altogether. It wasn't until 2009 when they brought them back to the lineup. And I remember being a freshman in high school at the time and watching it after school. I'd still say it was more of an apology for CN Radio. Marathons and programming blocks this period: Saturday Block Party, Cartoon Theater Thanksgiving Movie Marathon, A Cartoon Network Christmas, and New Year's Eve 2004. Toonami would move to Saturday nights, while Maguzi would take over weekday afternoons. Notable specials this year include Scary Godmother, Ed and Eddie's Jingle Jingle Jangle, and Nine Dog Christmas. And that was Cartoon Network in 2004. A reminder, I covered the pre-City stuff of 2004 in my Powerhouse Timeline vid, and covered the year 2005 in an older vid. Now we can talk about the more lesser eras that came after, like that stupid Follow Something Grown As Invented era, those lame nudes. But I don't think it would matter, it just won't be the same. City, along with Powerhouse, were two eras of CN's history that just will never be topped. Its impact is so noticeable, every once in a while, Cartoon Network would acknowledge the City era in some projects, like the OKKO episode, Crossover Nexus. Powerhouse had the more iconic programming lineup, and let's face it, we'll never forget CN City. But I grew up with both, and while I always prefer Powerhouse, City will always have my respect because it had what many kids and animation fans wanted for a long time. A wouldn't it be cool fantasy. Like, would it be cool if all these cartoons lived in the same city and we would see them live their lives? Then it just went away. C'est la vie. CN might be in a questionable place now, but it was and always will be the best place for cartoons. I'm 47 Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly.
This is Cartoon Network.
Well, you heard me gush over the Cartoon Network Powerhouse era and how important it was to me growing up, and for the channel in general. Now let's talk about their second best era, CN City. Originally this video was going to cover the full City era timeline, but Shadow Streak already covered that in much more detail, so check that out when you get a minute. But today, I'm going to talk about the year that stood out the most. So let's take a nostalgic trip to 2005.
There you go.
2005, as you all know, was a busy year in entertainment, especially in television. It was the year Family Guy was brought back from the dead, reality shows were on the rise, and hit comedies like It's Always Sunny, Robot Chicken, and The Office debuted. In kids programming, Disney Channel continued to pump out hit shows for the tween demographic, while Nickelodeon would end one of their flagship shows and revive their most popular one after a hiatus. They would break new ground, debuting a little show called Avatar: The Last Airbender. While over at Cartoon Network, their then still pretty new rebrand CN City was in full effect, with its memorable bumpers. For those who don't know, during commercial breaks, the network would air these short bumpers showing every Cartoon Network, Hanna-Barbera, Warner Brothers, and MGM character in one setting. This huge CGI city. It was really creative. Where else would you see Johnny Bravo and Samurai Jack doing laundry, the Edge trying on Ami and Yumi's clothes, or Mandy and Raven interacting? There was nothing else like this at this time. And let's not forget the new logo, which is just a C and an N, and a new announcer, a young woman named Nikki.
Now it's Codename Kids Next Door. Then it's Atomic Betty. This is Cartoon Network.
This new year saw the debut of new shows like Camp Lazlo, featuring the misadventures of a monkey named Lazlo attending a Boy Scout summer camp named Camp Kidney, filled with other anthropomorphic animals. The show was very funny and had a very surreal sense of humor, almost having a Rocko's Modern Life feel to it, which is interesting seeing how it's done by the same creator, Joe Murray. The show would air its final episode in 2007. There was also The Life and Times of Juniper Lee. This Monster of the Week show featured a high school girl, the titular Juniper Lee, who's the only one who can see monsters and demons, both good and bad, as they are separated from the human world thanks to a magical shield. I liked this show when it came out, but I love it as an adult. The whole show is a good-natured spoof of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, as well as having similarities to other Save the World from Supernatural and Get to School on Time cartoons, which is sort of a weird trend back then now that I think about it. On top of that, Juniper Lee is a likable protagonist. Some of the monsters do have great designs, and I do remember a lot of these side characters. And it does have Asian representation, which is really nice. The creator is Judd Winick, who actually has an interesting career, from starring in MTV's Real World San Francisco to writing Batman Under the Hood for DC Comics. The show ended in 2007 and fell into obscurity, but I really hope more and more people check it out. It's criminally underrated. Also, my gym partner is a monkey, about a boy who accidentally gets sent to a school full of wild animals. Yeah, I was never a fan of this show. It was a bit too obnoxious at times. The show's creators were husband and wife duo of Tim and Julie Cahill, who actually wrote for much better projects. Finally, we have Ben 10, created by comic book group Man of Action, about a 10-year-old boy who could transform into different alien creatures thanks to a device called the Omnitrix. You're probably gonna hate me for this, but I never cared for this show. It's definitely a creative idea, don't get me wrong, but the characters just never did it for me. I just kinda thought they were dull. But hey, the show launched a franchise with toy lines, several incarnations, so joke's on me. But I will admit, that theme song kicks so much ass. For the viewers that weren't into the newer shows, there is the revival version of the Cartoon Show, where instead of original animated pilots, it would consist of reruns of older classic Cartoon Network shows that were no longer airing on the channel or recently ended. Speaking of classics, many of the old Hanna-Barbera and Warner Brothers cartoons had a permanent home at Boomerang. Tom and Jerry and the occasional Scooby-Doo cartoon would be the only classics running on CN. Ending this year, Megas XLR, Jenny Tartakovsky's Star Wars Clone Wars, and the original run of Powerpuff Girls. This wouldn't be the last time we see the latter two, as Clone Wars would be rebooted in 2008, and Powerpuff Girls will get several crappy revivals and specials. Returning this year, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Codename Kids Next Door, and Billy and Mandy. Also returning Ed, Edd n Eddy, which originally was supposed to end in 2004, but renewed for more episodes due to popular demand. This new season was notable for the use of digital ink and paint, as Ed and Eddy was the last show to use cell animation. On Fridays, co-host Nzinga Blake would lead the show and would be replaced by anime voiceover actress Tara Sands from that year until its end in 2007. In addition to Toonami still going strong on Saturday nights, notable blocks this year included Turkey Days, Cartoon Network's Holiday Rush, and the short-lived Tickle You. This was Cartoon Network's attempt to get into the preschool market. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. Though definitely not the first time, this was when the network's identity was set in stone, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense to show cartoons aimed at toddlers on the same channel that showed raunchy adult cartoons late at night, admittedly. At least they learned their lesson and never made that same mistake again. Fuck! Cartoon Theater continued with no Don LaFontaine, but most notably, they added movies owned by Time Warner's competition and even live-action family films like The Goonies. Now, of course, we can't talk about this year without mentioning Cartoon Network's Summer. This was awesome. Remember when I said Cartoon Network's programming blocks used to be a special event you had to see? Well, case in point. I remember as a kid just graduating from 5th grade and being so excited to watch this. The bumpers showed all the cartoons at this rock concert, which was a nod to Woodstock. I still remember certain ID spots too, like Laszlo with the ice cream. Speaking of which, this was also when Camp Laszlo and Juniper Lee debuted, as well as the premieres of Kids Next Door movie Operation Zero and the direct-to-video movie Aloha Scooby-Doo. And let's not forget that catchy as hell theme. It never got this good again. The following year, it was replaced by the Yes era, and while not as bad as what was to come, it was...
I like music, I like music that goes like la 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 la.
Trust me, if you thought Fred was kinda funny and Billy and Mandy, after watching these bumpers, you're gonna want to strangle him. As the years went on and Cartoon Network started to get their act together, I remember noticing they put in less effort in their bumpers and rebrands, and financially, I could see why. They can get really expensive. That's not the only reason. In my opinion, there was something magical and iconic about the Powerhouse's City era that can't be topped. But quite frankly, with TV dying and streaming services on a rise, why would they need to? A lot of the Cartoon Network shows, old and new, are available on HBO Max. And even I've taken a liking to the newer stuff. I love Craig of the Creek. I'm warming up to Teen Titans Go, and I'm just getting into Infinity Train. Currently, YouTube is the place to see all these old bumpers of yesteryear, and a great reminder that these cannot be duplicated. They came out at just the right time. Who knows what the future will hold for Cartoon Network, but hopefully they will continue to entertain generations of cartoon lovers and kids just like they did us millennials. Until next time, I'm 47 Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly.
Just get on down to Cartoon.
Wow! Where's that again? Cartoon? No, that's not it.
The following may cause uncontrollable reflex movements of legs and feet. I don't know, but I heard tell.
Growing up in the 90s and 2000s, there was a lot of programming blocks aimed at kids, whether it be for Saturday mornings, weekdays after school, or in the evenings. But I want to talk about my favorite block, Cartoon Network's Cartoon Fridays. Now in this video, we're going to be taking a look at one of the most popular blocks that ever came out during our childhoods, and the many changes it went through over the years. So let's not waste any time. This is the history of Cartoon Fridays. First, let's go back to October 1st, 1992. Cartoon Network was launched and made history as the first ever channel to show cartoons 24 hours a day. That's right, no talk shows, no sitcoms, no court shows, just cartoons day and night. It was a great idea that became a huge success, becoming one of the top cable channels in the US and introducing a new generation of viewers to many Warner Brothers, MGM, and Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Not to mention reimaginings of old favorites. By the late 90s, after successfully creating a weekday afternoon block that helped bring anime to the US, Cartoon Network wanted to compete with other cable networks with their own original programming in prime time. After all, Nickelodeon had the Nickelozone, Toon Disney had Magical World of Toons, and Fox Family had a whole bunch of crap. You never watched it! The result was Cartoon Fridays, the Friday night marquee block for Cartoon Network's original programming, which include their most popular shows like Dexter's Lab, Cow and Chicken, Johnny Bravo, Powerpuff Girls, Courage the Cowardly Dog, and Ed, Edd n Eddy. More obscure shows like Mike, Lou and Og, Sheep in the Big City and Time Squad, to later hits like Billy and Mandy and Codename Kids Next Door. CCF was created by Stephen Patrick and Christina Agustinos, animated at Primal Scream Studios in Atlanta, and written by Chris Kelly and Billy Cohn, who would later be known for writing Cartoon Network and Adult Swim material. The block made its debut on the night of June 11th, 1999, and Cartoon Network promoted the heck out of it. I still remember those commercials at the time.
Somebody's coming! We'll see you over there! Who are you people?
CCF was a little different when it first started. In its original format, it was hosted by live-action actors and actresses. They would usually perform cartoon-related skits parodying lottery shows, weather forecasts, astronomy, marching bands, and livestock auctions. You know, the stuff kids usually watch. As you might expect, this version wasn't exactly popular. So in June of 2000, CCF was given a major revamp, which was where we got to see the white studio setting, the huge ribbons, the Fridays disc, and that catchy opening theme. Each week, a character from the cartoons would host, like Johnny Bravo, Bubbles, Double D, Dexter, even Sheep from Sheep in a Big City hosted once. It was odd seeing how he communicates by bleeding. You couldn't tell if he was announcing the next show or telling a joke. Another huge part of CCF was the announcer, Tom Clark. The enthusiasm this guy had was amazing. Instead of being there just to do his job, Tom really brought a real energy to the show, almost as if he was excited to see these cartoons as we were.
So join Ed and Eddy next Friday at 7 for Cartoon Fridays, only on Cartoon Network.
His replacement, Doug Priest, was a little too bland in my opinion. Not as engaging as Tom was.
This Friday at 7 for Cartoon Fridays, only on Cartoon Network.
I love seeing all these characters interact with each other. That was always the best part of the show. CCF also had many events during its run, like the Halloween party, the Christmas party, the Big Game Tailgate party, and the Big Pick. What was the Big Pick? Well, it was a successor of sorts to the What a Cartoon Show, featuring new animated pilots that would premiere during 2000 and 2001. It was held for fans to vote for which pilot would become a new series, which was where Codename Kids Next Door and Billy and Mandy came from. CCF was a huge hit. If you were a kid in the early 2000s, chances are you were watching it every Friday night, watching new episodes of your favorite shows. It brought Cartoon Network their biggest ratings during the 2001-2002 season. Even Nickelodeon tried to jump on a bandwagon with Friday Night Nicktoons. It was nowhere near as popular as CCF. During its final 2 years, it went through many changes. Tom Clark was gone, the Toons hosting wasn't as frequent as it was before, and there was the addition of non-cartoon cartoons, like Samurai Jack and What's New Scooby-Doo. Samurai Jack makes sense seeing how it is a Cartoon Network production, but What's New definitely was a head scratcher for me. It was already airing on Kids WB at the time. They really couldn't find another time slot to put it in? Compared to the whole lineup of CN originals, What's New stood out like a sore thumb. Cartoon Fridays aired for the final time on May 16, 2003, and was briefly replaced by Summer Fridays. Then in October of the same year, marked the debut of Fridays. This new version of the show had a "you can't do that on television" / laugh-in variety show style, and it featured live-action hosts, new sets, skits, and characters. The opening was amazing. Definitely some of Primal Scream's best work. It was so cool seeing every Cartoon Network, Hanna-Barbera, MGM, and Looney Tunes character running around CN Studios. The song was pretty catchy too. The two hosts were Tommy and Zynga. They were both funny, charming, and had great chemistry. You honestly couldn't wait to see them again. Zynga was later replaced by anime voice actor Tara Sands. She was okay, I guess. The hosts were accompanied by a group of kids and also some puppet characters. One of them voiced by Andy Murrow, the guy who voices Brack. I do remember some of the skits too, like the Big Guy Shimmy, Milkman Fred, and the Diner Lady. The cartoon name was dropped at this time, so the originals could still air along with acquired shows from Warner Bros. Animation. Fridays also had special guest stars, like music groups or actors promoting the latest family flick. Granted, on CCF you might have gotten Coolio or the Apples, but Fridays really took advantage of having these stars. There was also musical guests, like Amy Lee from Evanescence and Chris Brown.
That's me.
Pre-Rihanna beating Chris Brown. While not as good as CCF, Fridays was a solid replacement. What could possibly go wrong?
Never mind.
Oh yeah, Fried Dynamite. I don't have really much to say about this one, except it was pretty bad. Lame skits and obnoxious kid actors. Though to their credit, it looks like they're having a lot of fun. This was also during the time when Cartoon Network was starting to slum it with their cartoons, with some exceptions. I guess with this, Out of Jimmy's Head, and What Was to Come, this was the beginning of the network's decline in the late 2000s. There was also the Thursday night block, Har Har Thursdays in 2008, which didn't last that long. And CN wouldn't have another Friday night block until 2012. Now let me back up for a minute. In 2009, Cartoon Network launched CN Real, which showed live-action reality shows that were so generic Discovery Kids didn't want them. It goes without saying that this block bombed pretty hard. I bring this up because during this time I wasn't really watching the network that much for this reason. Once in a while there were specials and marathons that caught my attention, but for the most part it was a no for me. In fact, I was actually watching Adult Swim more than I was watching Cartoon Network. I was also in high school during this time, so I was also preoccupied with other stuff. But during the next few years, I was actually interested in Cartoon Network again. You see, they were going through a bit of a resurgence around this time, with new creator-driven shows. The live-action stuff was getting phased out, and this was the time I was getting into cartoons like Regular Show, Symbiotic Titan, Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, and the Looney Tunes Show. Which brings me to 2012, marking the 20th anniversary of Cartoon Network. And they were celebrating in a big way, with all new bumpers, DVD releases, and most importantly, a new Friday night block, Cartoon Planet, debuting in March of 2012. Well, okay, not entirely new. It was a revival of the original block from the 90s. It marked the return of Brack and Zorak from Space Ghost Coast to Coast, once again voiced by the original actors. Rest in peace, C. Martin Croker, and thanks for the Cartoon Network hat. The block featured reruns of classic Cartoon Network shows, not seen on a network since the 2000s, and were unceremoniously dumped on Boomerang. As always, Brack and Zorak were the best part of the show, cracking hilarious one-liners and sketches to boot. Later on, the block became less about returning to old favorites and became more of a dumping ground for recent Cartoon Network shows. Cartoon Planet remained on the air even after the anniversary was over, and aired for the final time on February 2014.
When I say Friday, you say party. Friday, Friday.
Then in 2017, there was the Cartoon Network Friday Party, which, okay, let's just call it what it is. It was basically a Teen Titans Go marathon, so for the most part, a regular CN schedule. It's a shame because all these great shows and the Powerpuff Girls reboot were pretty much overshadowed by Teen Titans Go. I don't hate it, at least not anymore, but the oversaturation of it is pretty annoying. The Friday Party lasted until April of 2017.
It's the weekend! Start acting like it!
Overall, Cartoon Fridays may have ended, but I'll never forget the creativity, the laughs, and unforgettable characters I looked forward to every Friday night. For me, I think of it as my generation's Disney afternoon. It leaves just as big of an impact. What were your favorite moments for CCF? And what was your favorite era? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, I'm 47 Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly. Close us out, Amy Lee.
If you lived here, you'd be home by now.
As you know already, I'm a huge fan of Scooby-Doo. I was introduced to reruns of the show in the mid-90s on the Turner stations, and I've been hooked ever since. I loved every incarnation that's come out, most of them, and it continues to be one of my all-time faves. And you could bet I'm going to see the new movie Scoob, whenever the hell that's coming out. Another favorite of mine is the Cartoon Network series, Courage the Cowardly Dog, with its dark and surreal atmosphere, likable characters, and scary images. Like most cartoons, it stood the test of time, and many people who grew up with it look back on it fondly, not just for the characters and the surrealism, but also the mature themes the show tackled at times. But I remember I saw a special in 2000 that actually had these iconic characters meet for the first time, and that was the Scooby-Doo Courage the Cowardly Dog Scare-a-thon. Now let me clarify, I'm not talking about those famous promos and bumpers from back in the day that showed all these characters interacting. No, this was a Sunday night marathon that showcased Scooby and Courage episodes.
It's the Scooby-Doo Courage the Cowardly Dog Scare-a-thon, and your vote will decide which dog is the scariest. All next week at 7, only on Cartoon Network.
Something that was cool about Cartoon Network back in the 90s and 2000s was how they used to market these marathons. They were always treated like a big event that you had to see. You didn't care they were cartoons from 40 years ago or episodes you've seen a billion times already. Whatever they did, they got your attention and got you in front of the TV. They were pretty creative as well, and nowhere is that shown than their Scooby-Doo marathons. Like the popular Blair Witch spoof, the Scooby-Doo Project.
Shaggy, what are you doing in the corner?
I'm scared, man! Like scared!
Or the very obscure Night of the Living Doo.
Oh, you're right. We just need a good night's sleep.
I can't wait to get out of these clothes and into my jammies.
Yeah, me too.
But wait, we don't have any jammies.
By the time of the Scare-a-thon, Courage was about a year old, but quickly gained a huge fan base. In fact, its debut in 1999 was the highest rated premiere in CN's history at the time, becoming more popular than another new cartoon that premiered that same time, Mike, Lou, and Og. But back to the Scare-a-thon. The marathon was part of a sweepstakes sponsored by Cheetos, in which viewers who voted for the most scared dog online could possibly win a trip to Roswell, New Mexico. It was also promoting the then new direct-to-video release, Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders, which had a Courage cartoon as a special feature, the famous King Ramses episode. As for the winner, I definitely remember who won. It was Courage. The commercials leading up to the marathon showed the Scooby-Doo gang encountering an alien spaceship, then having to find a phone to call for help once they're stranded in the middle of nowhere. They stumble upon a farmhouse which is owned by Eustace, Muriel, and Courage, whose power is out. So while they wait, they pass the time telling ghost stories. Recently, VHS archivist Captain BZ found one of the segments to the marathon. This is particularly interesting because it featured an innuendo that went over my head as a kid.
You're back! Wonderful!
Where are you, Freddy?
Daphne and I were... Oh, well, I was just trying to start the mystery machine.
And I found him there, and then we started talking, and time kind of got away from us, you know?
Right, Daphne.
And probably one of the few times Courage and Eustace actually speak to each other.
Move in closer, everyone.
Muriel, I moved to have someone else tell a story. I know where this is going.
I don't think you do.
You have a new story?
Yes.
With a different ending?
Yes, you crazy dog.
I'll post a link below so you can see the whole clip. And hopefully more segments from the special will be found and uploaded soon. I'm 47 Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly. Hey, 47 Cartoon Guy from the future here. A reminder that the whole special has been found since last year and is uploaded in full by YouTuber That Freak. Enjoy! It's October again, which means it's time for a special Halloween installment of the Fantastic Legacy of Hanna-Barbera minisodes. Now for this video, I could go over notable specials like the Emmy-winning classic The Halloween Tree, the live-action underrated The Last Halloween, the Flintstone special where they meet Rockula and Frankenstone, or even the Casper special, Casper Saves Halloween. But for me, I'm going to revisit another gem starring my favorite crime-solving cartoon mutt, 1999's The Scooby-Doo Project.
This was supposed to be just another mystery in the woods.
Have you heard these woods are haunted?
You kids stay away. Those woods are cursed. I never go near them.
Like I bet she never goes near a dentist either.
We were cocky. Why shouldn't we be?
Don't forget, it's my turn to pull off the mask.
But then we got lost. In over our heads.
Wait a minute, I found a clue. Footprints.
No.
Those are our footprints. Those are our footprints.
Was the curse real?
Will someone go out there for a Scooby snack? Somebody! Anybody!
Maybe this time we shouldn't have meddled. We shouldn't have meddled.
Guess I'm gonna have to cheat a bit again. This special had no involvement from William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, and it wasn't made by Hanna-Barbera. It was produced at Cartoon Network, particularly their on-air promo department at the now-defunct Turner Studios in Atlanta. It was written and directed by Chris Casper Kelly, Larry Morris, and Steve Patrick. Before we dive in, first a little history. In the summer of 1999, The Blair Witch Project was released to theaters. It was a found footage movie about 3 film students in the woods making a documentary in search of the Blair Witch. People went nuts over this movie, and at the time was the highest grossing independent film. It spawned 2 sequels and launched a found footage horror craze in the late 2000s with Cloverfield and Paranormal Activity. I was too young to have seen it back then when it came out, but watching it as an adult, I can say it's a pretty effective horror movie, even if I am skeptical if most of it was real or not. The Blair Witch Project was a phenomenon, and like everything that's popular, it became the subject of parody. This gave inspiration to several Cartoon Network animators who were given the task to create packaging to promote their upcoming Scooby-Doo marathon during the Halloween season of 1999. 3 marathons in fact. One showing classic episodes of Where Are You, one featuring Scrappy-Doo-centric episodes, and a movie marathon, as well as the premiere of Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. The crew filmed all their live-action footage in Canada, with character animation provided by Primal Screen and the Scooby-Doo voice actors recording their lines on the phone. The behind-the-scenes footage is just as entertaining as a special. As you can see, the special is mostly live-action, with the Scooby-Doo characters being the only ones animated. I remember the commercials leading up to the special. One of them featured a police press conference, where the sheriff, played by a programming executive at Cartoon Network at the time, explains Mystery Inc.'s disappearance, while tapes of their trip in the woods were found. Segments of the special would air in between commercial breaks of the marathon, and at the end, Cartoon Network would just air the entire thing. The special mostly plays out like the film. The gang documents their latest mystery, as they are in search for a monster in Casper County, a nod to one of the writers and directors, Chris Casper Kelly. They interview many of the locals.
about that mystery sleuthing thing, you know, where you're chasing around after the ghosts and the witches and all that. It's like a mystery deal. You're cartoons, aren't you?
The gang decides to camp out in Casper County woods in pursuit of the monster, and as always, spookiness and Scooby hijinks ensue. The special is known for being just as creepy and suspenseful as the Blair Witch Project, and also, there's something pretty unsettling about seeing these usually friendly characters snapping at each other and slowly losing their minds.
Will you just admit that we're lost, Velma? Fred, give me the map.
I don't have the map. I gave it to you. Just remain calm.
You remain calm.
I am calm. You're the ones that aren't calm.
I'm calmer than you.
I'm always calm, man. I'm the calm one. I'm calm. I'm calm.
That's disturbing.
Not only that, but the special is pretty funny. A lot of it has to do with the dialogue and mocking the Scooby formula. I think some of my favorite jokes are showing like the map they use, which is nothing more than a dotted line and an X. Shaggy being snarky, and probably the only time I ever found an anti-Scrappy joke funny. The gang runs into him in the woods and get annoyed by him pretty quickly, and once they hear something, Scrappy runs off and tries to fight it. The gang responds by up and leaving him. Wow, that is harsh. The performances are great too. Frank Welker, B.J. Ward, Scott Ennis, and the late great Mary Kay Bergman are fantastic as always. When the gang are irritated with each other, they feel like they're irritated, and when they're scared, they really feel like they're scared. The final scene has them all entering a haunted house, where they're chased by the monster. They do the famous hallway gag, and reference one of the most famous scenes in the Blair Witch Project. The special ends with a missing persons poster, suggesting Mystery Inc. didn't make it. For 1999, that's pretty heavy. Here where your favorite childhood characters got killed. Kinda dark. The following year, during the big game, Roadrunner vs. Coyote, Cartoon Network added a scene of Fred talking to Motar from Space Ghost, revealing the whole thing to be fake. The animation in this special, particularly Scooby's, will be reused in other CN promotional material, and a monster will be reused in several bumpers. There was a follow-up in 2001, Night of the Living Dew. This will pull your fun at the new Scooby-Doo movies, with then contemporary guest stars like David Cross, Mark Hamill, Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, and Gary Coleman. I must have missed this when I was a kid because I didn't see it until I was in high school when someone uploaded on YouTube. Not sure what I was doing to miss it back then. Seeing how it aired on a Wednesday, it's possible I was dragged to church or something. It's pretty funny as well, and has bits of that early Adult Swim humor. In conclusion, the Scooby-Doo Project is a fun, affectionate spoof of both the Scooby-Doo franchise and the Blair Witch Project, and this is before the latter got parodied to death. And also a good example of Cartoon Network turning blocks and marathons of decades-old reruns and making them into an event. Nowadays, younger generations is discovering this on TikTok, and as for someone who watched it when it first aired in 1999, damn, I feel old. Tell me what you think of the special. Did it scare you as a kid? Did you laugh? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, I'm 47 Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly. I'm not the biggest fan of sports. I get why people like them. I don't look down on anyone that does, but it never really interested me. The Super Bowl is one of the biggest TV events in history, back then and today, and yet my only knowledge is famous commercials and what shows debuted after.
Catch a sneak preview of Family Guy right after the Super Bowl on Fox.
But for me, I had my own Super Bowls as a kid. One was 2 Disney's Puma Bowl, and the other was the subject of today's video, Cartoon Network's The Big Game. From 1998 to 2001, Cartoon Network would air these special marathons to spoof sports programs that aired every Saturday in January, with a repeat on Super Bowl Sunday. They mostly featured classic cartoon characters pitted against each other, like Tom and Jerry, Roadrunner vs. Coyote, and Bugs vs. Daffy, with parodies of then popular Super Bowl commercials, halftime shows, and even appearances from other CN characters. For a parody, they went all out, even as going so far as to get actual commenters, like Pat Summerall and John Madden. I hate to keep sounding like a broken record, but this is what old Cartoon Network was great at, taking decades-old cartoons you've seen thousands of times and turning them into an event. As you might have guessed, all the specials were parodies of the Super Bowl. It mostly featured commenters like Pat and John doing play-by-plays over slapstick moments for the classic cartoons. The best thing about pretty much all of them are interviews with the fans of both teams. It's so over the top, it's hilarious.
Who let the duck out? Quack, 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 quack. Who let the duck out? Quack.
I also love how seriously some of the commenters are taking it, as if they're talking about a real sporting event. But they know it's silly too, and there's a funny joke here and there.
That's not my voice. I haven't seen lip sync that bad since Milli Vanilli.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought, girl, you know, it's true. It was a pretty darn good song.
For commercial breaks, Cartoon Network had a series of fake ads spoofing popular Super Bowl commercials. There were some I immediately recognized even as a kid, like the one spoofing Gap. Others I didn't get until I was older, like the one spoofing the famous Mean Joe Green commercial, the Monster.com When I Grow Up ad, and Velma's Secret, a parody of Victoria's Secret. Others I still don't get. Does anyone know what this one is spoofing?
Huh?
And now, this message.
Today's video is brought to you by Audible. Audible allows you to listen to audiobooks and podcasts on any device, whether it be a smartphone, iPad, or tablet, and it picks up right where you left off, with thousands of titles to choose from. The book I'm reading now is The Fresh Prince Project, How the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air Remixed America by Chris Palmer, an in-depth look at the history of one of my favorite TV shows of all time. Sign up for a 30-day free trial, and your first audiobook is covered. Go to audible.com/cartoonguy. Again, that's audible.com/cartoonguy. Now, back to the show. I was able to reach out to Stephen Patrick. He did a lot for Cartoon Network, particularly their on-air promo department. He was the director and co-writer of the Scooby-Doo Project, co-creator of Cartoon Fridays, writer for Harvey Birdman, and producer of those obscure late 2000s shorts. I asked him about how the specials came to be. He had this to say: "From my memory, the first one was Tom vs. Jerry, to counter-program the actual Super Bowl in the winter of '98, and it was shorter of a production than they became. That one was produced by Eric Richter. Maybe just the game itself, with Madden and Summerall announcing. The next year, airing in '99, it was Tweety vs. Sylvester, and the production was bigger, produced by Pete Johnson and Stuart Hill, adding the Inside the NFL guys to do a pregame show. We also added commercial parodies that year. Then the game airing in 2000 was the one I wrote and produced with Craig Sven Gordon, which was Roadrunner vs. Coyote. That one added a documentary on the history of the big game, again produced by Pete Johnson, more commercial parodies, a longer pregame show, more celebrity guests, and a longer game if I'm remembering correctly. The last year they did it was Bugs vs. Daffy in '01. But I was so deep into producing CCF every week that year, I don't remember much about that one. For, I think it was Tweety vs. Sylvester, they did a shoot on the Saturday morning at a local bar to simulate a viewing party, with fans and for extras. They called in everyone who worked at CN and their families. Did it again for Roadrunner vs. Coyote. Fake choreographer for the halftime show for Roadrunner vs. Coyote, Helmut Spazmacher, was played by Michael Kohler, who wrote countless pieces of music for Air and a lot for sound design. Many Cartoon Network characters would make cameos. In the first one, Tom vs. Jerry, Shaggy even makes an appearance as a sportscaster, and for some reason he's called Shaggy Bumpkus. Oddly enough, he was voiced by Casey Kasem, but he left a role around this time, so that might mean this and a promo spoofing Scream might be one of the last things he did as Shaggy for a while.
So, like, where do I put this thing? Where? In my ear? Like, you gotta be kidding.
Bugs vs. Daffy had Dexter and Mojo Jojo going back and forth at each other, as Dexter was rooting for Bugs and Mojo was rooting for Daffy. Even Cal does a Britney Spears-esque dance for the halftime show. Also, that reporter, you know who he is? That's Tom Clark, who was the announcer for Cartoon Network from 2000 to 2002. This guy was awesome. His enthusiasm whenever he would say what's coming up next was so infectious.
Coming up next, it's JBVO, followed by Tom and Jerry on Cartoon Network.
He's got some great comedic timing too.
What? What do you mean? No, wait a minute. Hold on.
Are you all right there, Tom?
Oh, no. No. I'm okay. I'm fine.
There were several pre-game specials. The one I remember the most was the tailgate party for Cartoon Fridays. I remember the night it aired, I was bummed out because I was going to be dragged to church. But something happened that we ended up not going, so I was able to watch it, and you can imagine how happy I was. I thank God YouTube exists, because I would never be able to relive these fond memories. So why did the Big Game series end after Bugs and Daffy? Why couldn't we have a Big Game Popeye vs. Bluto or something? Well, according to Stephen Patrick, I think by Bugs vs. Daffy, the idea had kind of reached its limit. If I had to guess, there was also the point where Adult Swim started separating out what was for kids and what was for adults on CN. And those specials were a product of when the network was more for all ages. That's total speculation on my part though. After the last Big Game, we shifted towards an awards show parody one year, The Fancy Anvils, which I worked on with Stuart Hill and Mac Picchini. After that, I was put in charge of revamping Fridays and casting Tommy and Zynga, and later Tara, so that kept me out of the loop on regular promo stuff for years. Even if it did stop there, these specials certainly were entertaining. These actually are a lot of fun to look back on. It especially has me nostalgic for a time when Cartoon Network was aimed at both kids and adults, and a time where there was so much variety and creativity in programming blocks and marathons. But regardless, enjoy your Super Bowl Sunday, and until next time, I'm 47 Cartoon Guy and I gotta fly. Today I want to talk about the Powerpuff Girls movie, a film which didn't get a lot of attention when it first came out in 2002, but has since then gained a sizable cult following. But before we get into that, I might as well talk about the original series the movie is based on. Of course, I'm old enough to remember when the Powerpuff Girls started out as shorts on a Cartoon Network pilot showcase, World Premiere Toons, aka What a Cartoon. And I was there when the actual show debuted in 1998. Which quickly became a phenomenon. Kids loved it, adults loved it, and there was merchandising everywhere you went. Toys, books, video games, even Sea-Watches. Remember those?
Powerpuff time is 3 p.m. Yes, ma'am. What? We'll be right there. Girls, move out. We can handle this.
Animated Powerpuff Girl Sea-Watches for the girl on the move.
Even other studios tried to copy its success. Naturally, a Powerpuff Girls movie will be in development in 2001. But not a TV movie like Dexter's Lab Ego Trip, a full-length theatrical feature, to be directed by series creator Craig McCracken, written by McCracken and series regulars Lauren Faust, Don Shank, Charlie Bean, and Paul Rudish, and made at the then new Cartoon Network Studios. The movie came out around the time theatrical films based on cartoon shows were beginning to make a comeback, thanks to the Rugrats movie in 1998. These films usually had more grander plots and a bigger animation budget than what you would usually see on television. You had your Recess Schools Out, your Doug's First Movie, your Pokemon movies, your South Park movie, even movies based on shows that weren't all that popular, like Teacher's Pet. As common as these were, they were also partially responsible for killing 2D theatrical animation. For more info on that, check out Rebel Taxi's video on the subject. The plot is an origin story of how the girls came to be. We follow Professor Utonium, who was saddened by all the crime in Townsville. Utonium decides to do something about it by creating the perfect child using sugar, spice, and everything nice, as one does. But a splash of chemical X causes an explosion, which results in the creation of 3 girls, Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup, who have special powers. The explosion also seems to affect the professor's pet monkey, Jojo, who caused the accident. The professor and the girls become one big happy family. The girls even go to kindergarten, but a game of tag causes destruction of Townsville, angering its citizens, and especially the mayor. They're ostracized from the town and are forbidden to use their powers, which is great news to the professor's monkey, now called Mojo Jojo, who is now a hobo. After saving the girls, he befriends them. Little do they know, he's manipulating them to carry out his evil plan to take over Townsville, and possibly the world. The movie is a lot of fun, and while the action sequences are fantastic, what holds up well in my opinion are the character moments, particularly the relationship between the professor and the Powerpuff Girls. The girls, while not the most complex characters, are pretty likable and you feel for them. When the whole town hates them, they don't know any better, they were created a few days ago. And you feel for the professor too. Here's a guy that just wanted to help the town and created superpowered girls who are a handful, but he grows to love them like a family. The scene where he pleads to be let out of jail just to get to his girls is really heartbreaking. especially with Tom King delivering one heck of a good performance. Even Mojo, while clearly the bad guy, you can feel where he's coming from too. One thing you might have noticed is the animation is given a huge upgrade. This is the first time to use digital ink and paint, which gives a more brighter and cleaner look. Even the designs are given a makeover. It would be carried over to the final seasons of the original show. Characters like Mojo and the Gangrene Gang have a more sharper look to them. And on top of that, they gave the professor new eyes, which personally I was never a fan of. There are many shots in this I just love. I want to frame them and hang them in my apartment. I love the speed of the animation during the action and fighting scenes, like the tag sequence, even if it does go on a bit too long. You might also say the fast-paced action in the film would be the blueprint of something like the Spider-Verse movies decades later. The final battle is my favorite part of the film, especially with the colors and lighting, complementing the action. And I always get a chuckle out of the scene where Mojo's minions plan to take over themselves, with Mojo providing some snide remarks.
And if you don't like it, you can sniff my Babu Bot bombs!
Oh, that's classy. So you might be thinking, this movie has everything a Powerpuff Girls fan would want. The characters you know and love, great animation, rocket score. Why did it bomb? Well, there's a reason. Several, in fact. The critics gave the film positive reviews, though many had issues with the violence. This came out a year after 9/11 and it didn't seem appropriate. But when you look at the box office when it really matters, it flopped. Like many animated films released by Warner Brothers, the marketing was piss poor. Warner Brothers had a majority of their marketing spent on a live-action Scooby-Doo movie released a month earlier, and it was already a big hit. Competition didn't help either. It was released the same day as the much-anticipated sequel, Men in Black 2, and a little Bow Wow vehicle like Mike. Not to mention Disney's Lilo and Stitch will come out 2 weeks later, and everyone forgot about the Powerpuff Girls movie pretty quickly. Another reason for its failure, if I had to guess, is the darker tone, which I assume caught a lot of kids and parents off guard in its original release. But if there's anyone that put any effort in marketing the film, it was Cartoon Network. I remember the TV spots airing on the channel at the time. There was a marathon, Kids WB aired new episodes on their Saturday morning block. Even Space Ghost promoted the film.
Find out this Christmas.
The Powerpuff Girls movie, only in theaters July 3rd, rated PG.
I even remember that No Secrets music video, That's What Girls Do, which I'm not ashamed to admit I think is one hell of a bop. But it didn't matter. The film failed to make its budget back, and CN put the kibosh on future Cartoon Network theatrical films. It wouldn't be until 2018's Teen Titans Go to the movies that a film based on a Cartoon Network show would be released in the theaters, though that's more of a WB property than a Cartoon Network original. The Powerpuff Girls will continue for 2 more seasons, but Craig McCracken was out of the picture, as he was off working on Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Dexter and Powerpuff Girls storyboard artist Chris Savino was now the showrunner. This was around the time I lost interest in the show. Almost every episode was dull and unmemorable, but there were some I liked. The Christmas special was a lot of fun, and I loved the episode parodying Rocky and Bullwinkle. The show quietly ended its run in 2005 and would air in reruns, and celebrated its 10th anniversary with the manic and incredibly entertaining Powerpuff Girls Rule. The girls would reappear in revivals from time to time. There was an anime adaptation in 2006, the Dance Pants special in 2014, and a reboot in 2016, but neither of them are very good. There was a Riverdale-style live-action drama series that was in the works from the CW, but it's currently scrapped, and judging by that abysmal script that leaked, it's probably for the best. And as it is writing, there's going to be another animated reboot coming soon, this time with Craig McCracken returning. What's interesting is this show will be made by Hanna-Barbera Studios Europe. Seeing how the original shorts and the series was made at HB, it's going to be cool to see the girls go back to their roots, kinda. On the whole, I think the Powerpuff Girls movie is a lot of fun. It gets a lot of mixed reactions, and for good reason, but I think there's enough in here that works and justify a theatrical release. I recommend checking it out, especially if you're a fan. So what do you think of the movie? Let me know in the comments. And until next time, I'm 47 Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly.
And so, for the very first time, the day is saved, thanks to the Powerpuff Girls. Hey, that's a good name for them.
Dexter's Laboratory was the first Cartoon Network original series, as well as one of the last cartoons made at the Hanna-Barbera studio at Cahuenga Boulevard before it closed down. The premise? A boy genius hides a secret laboratory from his parents and gets annoyed by his older sister Dee Dee who constantly interferes with his experiments, butts heads with his rival Mandark, and getting himself in and out of trouble thanks to his inventions. There are also other segments, like Dial M for Monkey, and The Justice Friends, my personal favorite of the two. It was funny, creative, had sharp writing, and had an art style that definitely defined the late 90s and the early 2000s. The series was notable for kickstarting the career of creator Genndy Tartakovsky, who had a long and deservedly successful career since. The show was a hit, running all the way to 2003, and had success in merchandising as well. But today, we're going to be looking at the show's magnum opus, the 1999 made-for-TV movie, Dexter's Lab Ego Trip.
Future, Mandark finally possesses all the power he's longed for, but he has one problem. Dexter has a time machine. Join Dexter in his battle to save the future. Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theater presents Dexter in Ego Trip, tonight at 7.
I saw this movie the night it premiered, and as a kid, I loved it. As an adult, I think I love it even more. Notable for being the first Cartoon Network original movie, it was directed by Genndy and written by Genndy, Amy Keeney Rogers, John McIntyre, Craig McCracken, and Paul Rudish. The plot revolves around Dexter, who learns he saved the future, but doesn't know what he did for it to happen. So he uses a time machine to find out. Along the way, he meets a skinny weakling version of himself, an elderly version of himself, and a macho buff action hero version of himself. It becomes Dexter's Lab No Way Home as they team up to stop Mandark, who stole Dexter's invention from taking over the world. The premise is nothing new. The idea of going through time to stop evil with past and future incarnations was done several cartoons before and a lot after. But the way it's executed makes this one heck of an entertaining watch. Much like Genndy's other works like Samurai Jack and Primal, Dexter's Lab excels in atmosphere, and this movie is chock full of that. It's a visually creative movie, and the production design is just fantastic. And I just love the look of the hellish future they create. It really complements the concept of the negative flow that plagued the Earth when Mandark took over. Even the designs of the characters are tweaked a little bit. Speaking of which, I love the characters. Dexter's is just as likable as always, and even though he's arrogant and self-centered, they do take the time to show him fighting for what's right. My favorite is when he meets his skinny weak self, and gets disappointed when he finds out what he's become. And is it me, or did Family Guy rip the scene off? Weakling Dexter can be a little annoying at times, but he makes up for it at the end. And old man Dexter gets a few giggles. I really love Action Dexter due to how much of a badass he is. Even Mandark, I can't believe I'm saying this, but at times he can be legit intimidating, even with Eddie Deezer doing the voice. But you can also buy a character like this would be so corrupt over time. Much like the show, there's a right balance of humor and action adventure. And there are some good laughs in this. Especially this adult joke I never got as a kid.
Honey, I don't think that's gonna fit.
Just a little more, dear.
Got it. See, hon? I told you I could do it.
Even some of the interactions are funny too. The real star of the movie is voice actress the late Christine Cavanaugh. She brings just the right amount of charm and likability to Dexter. And it's really impressive listening to her talk to herself when the three Dexters interact. Even looking back at the show, there was such a unique way she performed the character. Something I never felt the replacement Candy Milo got right. Nothing against her, of course. Christine's performance in this movie even won her an Annie. She's sadly no longer with us, but what she brought to characters like Dexter, Chucky, and Babe will last forever. May she rest in peace. There are some scenes and jokes that go a little bit too long, and the ending you're either gonna love or really hate, depending how you feel about Dee Dee. Sadly, the movie isn't available on streaming or DVD and Blu-ray. The last time it had a home media release was on VHS in 2000. It's not on HBO Max, the Boomerang app, iTunes, nothing. Currently, you can watch the whole thing on YouTube, so check it out there. This was originally supposed to be the series finale of the show, for real this time. But the success of the movie led to CN renewing the show for 2 more seasons without Genndy. And it should have ended with Ego Trip. I don't think they ever got this good again. But with that said, I recommend this movie. Creative visuals, great performances, and entertaining but still familiar story. is a fun ride, whether you're a Dexter fan or a Jenny Tartakovsky fan, and it deserves to be talked about. Until next time, I'm 47 Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly.
There's a place I know where the happening to moviegoers go.
Sounds groovy.
Yeah.
When it comes to movie blocks on popular kids channels, for us millennials, growing up in the late 90s and the early 2000s, it's easy to have a favorite. You might have been a Netflix kid, a Disney Channel movie kid, or a Toon Disney double feature show kid. But for me, Saturdays at 7, I was glued right to Cartoon Network, watching Cartoon Theater. This was CN's movie block that aired every Saturday night, with an encore on Sunday. Sure, there was Mr. Spin's Cartoon Theater before, but this is what I remember the most. I recall watching Cartoon Theater as early as 1998. The block showed many non-Disney movies that were owned by Time Warner. So basically Hanna-Barbera specials and movies, animated movies starring DC Comics characters, and the Looney Tunes package films of the 70s and 80s. I loved the opening and the bumpers, with spoofs of Paramount, MGM, and Columbia Pictures. Every Cartoon Theater showing would open with a spoof of Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, with most of the Hanna-Barbera and Cartoon Network Primates characters howling at the logo. Of course, the little kid is not going to get the reference, but it's a clever joke to look back on once you get older and go, oh, now I get it. They also aired movies from Universal, mainly movies from Don Bluth and their sequels. This is where I first saw films like An American Tail and Land Before Time. There are also obscure movies like Twice Upon a Time. It's got a huge following nowadays, but I remember watching this as a kid and being totally confused. Most notably, its run on Cartoon Network was the last time it ever aired on TV. Movies from Paramount also found their way on the block, like the late 70s, early 80s Peanuts movies, and the animated Charlotte's Web. Cartoon Theater was also my introduction to the iconic Wallace and Gromit shorts from Aardman. When the latest direct-to-video film from Warner Bros. Was coming out, you could bet it was going to premiere on Cartoon Network a month later. In fact, the premieres of Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island and Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost garnered the network huge ratings. Until I got the DVDs in 2001, no matter how many times I saw them, whenever they were the movie of the week, I would drop everything to watch them. That's how much I loved those movies. Dexter's Lab Ego Trip premiered on the block in December 1999. It was the first movie based on a Cartoon Network show. Those commercials leading up to the premiere was awesome. It used to give me chills as a kid.
This is incredible. Genius. The Earth is in flame.
Presenting Ego Trip, starring Dexter.
Premiering Friday at 7 on Cartoon Network.
The Animaniacs direct-to-video movie, Wacko's Wish, would frequently air too. Highly underrated if you ask me. I do remember it disappeared once Nickelodeon nabbed the rights to Animaniacs reruns back in 2001. When Samurai Jack premiered, they sliced the first few episodes together as a movie, and they premiered on Cartoon Theater as Samurai Jack: The Trilogy. Let's not forget Cartoon Theater's special marathon and holiday blocks. For Halloween, there was a special double feature, mostly for Scooby-Doo and those two Alvin and the Chipmunks animated movies. For Christmas, there was the Holiday Spectacular, and on occasion, movie marathons and double features. The host was the late Don LaFontaine, the movie trailer guy, and he was great. There was a special type of gravitas he added that was just so genuine. It's like Tom Clark on Cartoon Fridays. He almost seems just as excited to watch these movies as the audience were.
The Stone Age meets the Space Age when Cartoon Network's Cartoon Theater presents The Jetsons Meet the Flintstones, Saturday at 8 on Cartoon Network.
Anyone who says now back to the Jetsons Meet the Flintstones with this much enthusiasm is definitely doing something right. Sadly, he's no longer with us, and movie trailers haven't been the same, but I'll always remember the work he did for Cartoon Theater. May he rest in peace. During the final years of Cartoon Theater's original run, more and more movies were added, like Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker, and the Pokemon movies. Even some weird ones, like remember Millionaire Dogs? Of course you know. As Cartoon Network went through a huge retool, so did Cartoon Theater. 2004 marked the debut of the Popular City era. Cartoon Theater was still around, but Don LaFontaine was not. Instead, it was hosted by the announcer of CN at the time, Nikki, and the clever bumpers were replaced by original animation of Ed from Ed, Edd n Eddy as the theater usher. In addition to animated movies, live action family films were now airing on the channel. I just remember finding this a bit odd, though again, not as bad as what would happen later. Around the same time, several movies made their premiere on a new Fridays, like several Scooby-Doo movies, Ants, that stupid reanimated movie, Grandma Got Ran Over by a Reindeer, Dumb and Dumber, even a short The Karate Guard premiered, one of the last good Tom and Jerry productions. Cartoon Theater would go on in different forms under different names, but it just wasn't the same. Nowadays, Cartoon Network has Acme Night, which seems to be a mix of movies and shows. Now, I've given up on arguing about live action on CN at this point, but some of these movie choices don't make a lot of sense. 17 again? She's the Man? Man of Steel? Freaking Marley and Me? Who knows? Stuff like this, and also the airing of Family Matters of all things, has the current CN look like another kids network, instead of an all-animation channel dedicated to cartoon lovers, like it once was. Sad really, but what can you do? Oh well. No matter how many incarnations it had over the years, to me and many other 90s kids, the original Cartoon Theater will always be the best. I'm 47 Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly.